The third question. Question. He asked whether prayer, religious donations, fasting, and pilgrimage have real benefits and useful effect, or whether they are merely primitive pastimes and useless religious customs. Answer. O eminent scholar, may God confirm us both with penetrating vision and sound views. Know that such matters depend on the belief that there is a true, wise, encompassing, and omnipotent God above his servants, and that this God sends messengers and prophets to establish divine laws and to found religions. It is unimaginable that anyone could embrace any of the religions without submitting to this truth, or that any reasonable person would bear the difficulties and discomforts of worship and service without recognizing this abstruse reality. We Baha'is believe that all religions were ordained by God, that they spread by His power, became exalted by His word, and that they conquered the world through His will and volition. Just as religions depend on recognition of the existence of God, they are also dependent on belief in the immortality of souls and their survival after separation from the body. Were it not for an acceptance of this truth, no reasonable person would ever embrace any religion or follow any divine law. Spirits are eternal, and the worlds of God are imperishable. Moreover, as we explained earlier, bodies are in need of spirits, and no act can appear from any faculty save by the instrumentality of souls. Spirits make manifest the acts that proceed from these faculties. Spirits conform to the attributes that are grounded in those faculties. Given all this, no thinking individual will doubt that religion cannot be complete unless it is based on two separate sorts of laws and founded on two firm foundations. The first sort of law concerns the outward aspects of the world and the unity of nations. This includes the promulgation of justice and beneficence, the preservation of the rights of the people, and the establishment of manners involved in human relations, and the best means of associating together. Moreover, it includes the ruling of subjects, the progress of nations, and other means whereby human society is preserved. It is upon this sort of law that the pillars of culture and civilization are reared. The second type of law concerns the progress of souls, the purification of hearts, the refinement of characters, and the perfection of minds for the sake of their hoped-for survival in the worlds to come. This includes fasting, prayer, the mention and magnification of God, and other varieties of worship. It is obvious that some laws and ordinances were ordained for their spiritual properties and their benefit in the next life alone, such as prayers and the praise of God. These practices bear no relationship or any benefit to civilization or to the preservation of human society, except perhaps in some trivial respects. But there are also ordained laws concerning the externals of this world, which have no link with anything spiritual, such as most of the ordinances about politics and social and economic intercourse. There are, moreover, those laws which were ordained because they possess both sorts of benefit, discussed above, and these have splendid effects on both levels. They encourage good works, including justice, beneficence, pilgrimage, charitable contributions, truthfulness, trustworthiness, purity, and cleanliness, and command the avoidance of evil deeds such as murder, adultery, lying, treachery, tyranny, calumny, slander, and so on. The adherence to good and the avoidance of evil have manifest effects, for thereby human beings progress, improve their characters, safeguard society, and protect the rights of the community. An understanding of the way in which spirit is the actor and the effective agent, the body being nothing but an instrument, will necessarily lead us to an appreciation of the degree of the Spirit's influence. For it is the Spirit that performs the above-mentioned deeds, and takes on virtuous or base characteristics. Character is only an attribute which inheres in the actor through the repetition of the act until it becomes a characteristic. It is on the basis of attributes that mankind will be gathered together on the judgment day, and it is by these attributes that the extent of our gain or loss shall be known. Let us now discuss the benefits of the 4 ordinances about which the esteemed questioner has asked. May God guide him to the presence of his name, the self-subsistent, and give him to drink of the sealed wine. As for prayer, it is a ladder for the believer, a solace to the eye of one possessed of certitude, a station of intimacy with God, and a place to attain the presence of God and to turn in repentance to Him. Prayer is humility before God, recognition of His Lordship, affirmation of His unity, obedience to His will, and compliance with His every wish. Prayer thus has an effect on the spirit and makes the heart tender, removing it far from all cruelty and darkness. The heart then becomes aware of the virtues of servitude and perceives the full meaning of the rancor and evil caused by disobedience. Through prayer, a human being will see the effect of things with illumined insight and understand the influence of his actions with perspicuous certainty. Beyond all this, he will even recognize that there is an omnipotent, all-encompassing, victorious, and almighty God who visits retribution upon his servants for every offense, small or large, holding them responsible for every sin and crime. Such a one will necessarily strive to avoid transgressions and shameful acts out of real apprehension and deep fear. This is the secret of the verses, quote, "Prayer forbids indecency and dishonor," end quote, and, quote, "Seek you help in patience and prayer, for grievous it is, save to the humble," end quote. By the life of God, if prayers and other forms of worship did no more than bequeath certainty and bestow detachment and assurance in regard to religion, this would be sufficient as a virtue. For there is no life save through religion, and no religion except through certitude. Understand then the verse, "Serve thy Lord, until certitude comes to thee." The reason certitude derives from worship is that certitude is the Spirit's perception. The Spirit is a perceptive faculty, which encompasses the essences of all things, or on which their forms are imprinted. The Spirit grows ever stronger and purer through worship. Moreover, whenever the worshipper is engaged in prayer, concentrating upon the meaning of its words and basic elements, feeling the ecstasy of being so engaged. He will be kept from the grave transgressions and offenses, whereby the heart is hardened and the spirit is clouded. When the power, clarity, and purity of the spirit grow, so too does the faculty of perceiving realities and their forms. The strong, purified spirit perceives the realities of things as they are through encompassing them, but the sullied spirit perceives forms of things only through evidence and proof. Therefore, the sciences of the prophets are marked by direct perception, while the knowledge of the learned is obtained through analogy and evidence. Only those who have attained the station of certitude can know the full extent of this difference. Those who have not yet reached this station may deduce this difference from the writings of both sides. On the one hand are the prophets and the first generation of the people of faith, and on the other, the philosophers and the learned, who are masters of evidence and demonstration. The seeker will find between the writings of the two sides a clear distinction and a huge distance, as we shall, God willing, elucidate. This is only one of the signs of certitude, but it will suffice for those with insight. No consideration should be given to the assertions of the partisans of naturalism, including materialists and Darwinists, who claim that the prophetic writings are only the products of fanciful emotions and hysterical imaginations, that they have no reality, but have simply taken root in people's minds through long habituation and fervent study. For a man's progress through the stages of faith, to the point where he will gladly give his life to protect his religion, gives clear evidence for the soundness of his faith and the reality of his certitude. This transcendent quality, this astonishing attribute, is realized only through beliefs that require the exercise of independent judgment and the acquisition of knowledge, not through the inherited beliefs which demand blind imitation. The difference between these two kinds of faith manifests itself as the first grows and spreads its influence, like healthy seed in good ground, while the second falls and fails, like rotten seed on barren earth. It is obvious that matters concerning discernment and belief, such as doubt and certainty, opinion and decisive judgment, and so forth, are not things that outward senses can perceive. Geometrical proofs and philosophical analogies cannot be used to demonstrate them. Rather, it is deeds that give evidence of them, and hearts that bear witness to them. This is the secret of the noble Quran verse, wherein God addresses the Jews, quote, "O Jews, if you assert that you are friends of God above all others, then long for death if you speak truly." End quote. The Jews believed they were the sacred people, the children of righteousness, the good and pure family, and the friends of God above all others. God silenced them with this proof, and expelled them from the people of faith by explaining what was meant by friends of God, and making the station of the lovers of God clear. It is established and certain among the people of insight that the doubter will be distinguished from the one possessed of certitude only when the storms of trials blow, when the cyclones of tests arise, when the sharp teeth and claws, the rapacious predator attacks the unarmed believer, and when violent death bares its fangs, Then will the one who exercises independent judgment be known from the blind imitator, the steadfast from the feckless, and truth from falsehood. We have, in our own time, seen a great many pure souls with courageous and immaculate hearts, who, at the gathering of these storms, and at thunderous tempests, poured out their lifeblood with the utmost joy. For the love of God, they counted their blood as worthless. They disdained life and welcomed death with the greatest ardor. They hastened to the field of sacrifice and hurried to the scene of their death with their faces exultant and their hearts full of cheer, so that everyone was bewildered by their forbearance, and every onlooker was astonished at their calm and steady mien. They did not recant their religion, nor did they conceal their belief. By the life of God. This is the real martyrdom which attests to the soundness of their religion and the reality of their certitude. An even better proof of the loftiness of their certitude and the exalted station of their religion is their power to transform the hearts of others, their ability to exchange corrupt creeds for sound beliefs, and to change repulsive, savage natures into good and pleasing ones. By them, God has curbed the wicked and perverse morals, and the evil customs and beliefs that were firmly established among the ancient peoples, as no philosopher ever could, even with all the power of his thought and the depth of his knowledge. For God has granted to his chosen ones the capacity to convey his word, to spread his religion, to establish his cause, and to make manifest his proofs without drawing upon earthly, human forces. These chosen ones support themselves with nothing save divine power. They do not rely on acquired sciences or knowledge, on wealth or riches, on royal authority or sovereign power, or on kinship solidarity or cooperation. They exalt the name of God's religion with brilliant divine power, and need not raise it upon those outward pillars. This is a truth, the recognition of which distinguishes the people of ignorance from the people of faith, and the people of doubt from the people of certitude. Anyone who meditates upon the conditions of the first generation among the faithful, the companions of the prophets and messengers, such as the apostles of Jesus or the companions of Muhammad, will be able to perceive some of the signs of this mighty force and understand the meaning of this divine power. The disciples of Jesus promulgated the religion of God and transformed the absurd beliefs held by the nations. They abolished long-held savage customs of peoples around the world, without distributing printed books or dazzling them with wondrous manufactured goods, or opening schools of science, or resorting to military force. They had no help from the thunderous rumbling of cannons, nor were they reinforced by the clatter of steel, on which modern men have depended, and whereby they have become victorious. Rather, they spread the religion of God by their faith, erased unbelief by the power of their certitude, aided the cause of God with their blood, and exalted his word by offering up their lives. But the Jewish rabbis, the Zoroastrian priests, the philosophers of Greece, and the sages of Rome were unable to abolish even one of those absurd beliefs and customs, which seem so laughable today to their descendants, and at which their successors and grandchildren scoff. In the same way, the companions of the prophet dispelled the gloom of unbelief from the world by the light of this celestial force, and rooted out polytheism with this divine power. In order to perceive some of the effects of this mighty bestowal, it suffices to consider what is recorded in the noble biographies of the prophet, and in the authentic traditions from him. The great ones among the prophet's helpers, when they believed in and accepted the prophet in the last year prior to the immigration from Mecca to Medina, requested that he dispatch one of his companions to them to instruct them in prayers and religious practices, and to call the people of Medina to Islam. He sent Musab ibn Umair among others. Musab was a mere youth, wholly ignorant of reading and writing. He was known for neither his eloquence nor his oratory, and had only memorized the obligatory prayer and some verses of the Quran. He called the people of Medina to the new faith, and through him the majority of Yathrib's inhabitants embraced Islam before the Prophet arrived there, and before he unsheathed his sword, contrary to the claims of those who hold him in contempt. Likewise, in our own time, we have witnessed that some illiterates upon whom God bestowed this dazzling power have, with the potency of their certitude and the sincerity of their conviction, vanquished the hearts of ancient peoples who were wandering in the darkness of idle fancy and in the desert of blind imitation. They have transformed their inherited false dogmas into sound, demonstrable beliefs, destroyed their superstitions, and perfected their faith. Their ethics were renewed, their tastes edified, their vision set ablaze, and their consciences set at ease. Through the light of faith, their ignorance was turned into knowledge, their weakness into power, their treachery into trustworthiness, their evil into chastity, their estrangement into affection, their cowardice into valor, and their brutality into meekness. In sum, all their old corrupt ways were transformed into new and virtuous morals, and their inbred deluded creeds were changed into sound and valid beliefs. Thus, any fair-minded person can judge their transformation of character, their rebirth and renewal, in spite of their former lifelessness. All these things are but the effects of certitude, and certitude itself is a result of worship, as it was revealed to the trustworthy prophet, quote, "Serve thy Lord until certitude come to thee." End quote. Therein is what will suffice those with insight. As for the religious donations, this is a matter the benefits of which shine forth brilliantly. Contributing to the faith has a direct effect on the soul, insofar as it develops within it the virtue of munificence, while effacing the rancor caused by stinginess and avarice. Such contributions hold the key to generosity and well-being, which make command and leadership possible. For it is impossible to safeguard human society unless subjects pay a prescribed tax to their ruler, so that he may spend it on the various means of protecting their rights, directing their affairs, improving their conditions, and exercising leadership of the general public. For the sake of all these benefits, God established such contributions as one of the primary ordinances of the Islamic religion, and in the Quran clarified how they are to be spent. However, the people misconstrued the word of God and corrupted the divine laws, spending these donations in ways God never commanded. Therefore has their power become weakness, their life death, and their independence bondage. Thy Lord does not wrong his servants. As for fasting, its effects are even more clear and manifest. more perfect and exalted. For fasting possesses all the benefits of prayer, which we have mentioned and elucidated, while it also effectively disciplines the animal self and curbs the defiance of the appetitive faculties. This is obvious for all to see, and it does not require lengthy discourse or excessive explanation. For it is evident that man is one of the animal species, and animal faculties are intrinsically attracted to the natures imprinted upon them, and inclined to the pleasures derived from their disposition. We have explained in our other works that the legislative faculty, be it divine or human, belongs to the natural faculties and regulates the deeds that issue from the lower self. For it is impossible to restrain the willfulness of the self and turn it away from the base pleasures and destructive animal desires, save by training it with the discipline of the divine law, which has been handed down, and withholding it from the grave offenses by means of prescribed moral standards. This should not be through arduous artificial restraint, as the Sufis believe, or solely through refinement and learning in schools, as naturalist philosophers maintain. As for pilgrimage, this is the most perfect commandment, encompassing both spiritual and civilizational benefits, both religious and worldly rule. For God has ordained therein rituals and acts of prayer, commemoration and praise, which are useful for spiritual progress, as we have explained. Therein are also rules and practices which lead to mutual acquaintance, cooperation, association, and contact between various nations and races, and which offer great benefit to civilization. If this blessed and praiseworthy act of pilgrimage involved no more abstruse effect or no greater deed, which any wise or astute person recognizes, than to provide a means for creating intimacy and harmony, unity and concord among the great peoples, which we mentioned above. This would suffice to require that it be held in high regard and recognized for its mighty effects. For it is not an easy matter to bring together each year, from the borders of China in the east to the farthest reaches of Africa in the west, and from the principalities of India in the south, and to the hinterlands of Siberia in the north, every person who is able, from nobles of tribes and leaders of nations, in this vast gathering, for the purpose of performing this great and arduous rite, such that they see this as a religious duty and a divine command. By the life of God, if the rulers of Islam and the caliphs and the kings who have taken possession of this blessed spot, this noble land, knew how to make use of this lofty wisdom and divine policy, and if they treated the visitors of that sacred house in the best way, showing them the most fitting courtesy, facilitating their travel, preparing the means for their comfort, and if they arose to invite them to agreement and to warn them of the consequences of disunity, and alerted them to the benefits of harmony, then would they be able to establish a consensus among the Muslims and cause all the believers to stand beneath the shade of a single banner. Then would they acquire an invincible power and an exalted word. But only the intelligent and pure esteem these things, while the obscure and the foolish hold them in disdain. And so, alas, they have not appreciated the value of this laudable wisdom, and have not perceived the purpose of this apposite policy. They have mistreated the visitors to the ancient house, and robbed and plundered the pilgrims of that distant land, until the dispensation of the book has ended, and the sun of grace and glory set. Therein are signs for possessors of discernment.